The alarm pierced through the pre-dawn darkness at 5:30 a.m., but Marcus Williams was already awake. He had been staring at the ceiling for the past 20 minutes, his mind cycling through the same questions that haunted him every morning. How many more days would he need? How much more would he have to endure to truly understand what happened in the shadows of his own company? The penthouse apartment around him told a different story than the one he was about to live. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city skyline. Expensive art adorned the walls, and his Harvard MBA hung in a frame he rarely looked at anymore. But none of that mattered now. Today, like every day for the past 3 months, Marcus Williams would disappear. He moved through his morning routine with deliberate precision. The tailored suits remained untouched in his walk-in closet. Instead, he reached for the worn navy work shirt and matching pants, the uniform of invisibility. As he buttoned the shirt, his reflection stared back from the bathroom mirror, a successful black man erasing himself, piece by piece, to uncover an uncomfortable truth. "You don't have to keep doing this to yourself," he whispered to his reflection. The same words his sister had spoken during their last phone call. But she didn't understand. Nobody did. The weight of what he carried wasn't just about corporate oversight or management philosophy. It was about the stories that reached his desk. Complaints that seemed to vanish, diversity reports that painted pretty pictures while employees of color quietly left the company. He needed to see it for himself, feel it in his bones, understand the daily reality that his position had insulated him from. Marcus grabbed his keys and headed for the service elevator, avoiding the marble lobby where his portrait hung beside other company leaders. The irony wasn't lost on him. In a few hours, he would walk past that very portrait, invisible to the people who passed it every day. The employee entrance buzzed with early morning energy as Marcus swiped his carefully crafted ID badge. Maintenance staff, security guards, and cleaning crews moved with purpose, their conversations a mixture of different languages and shared exhaustion. Here, in these fluorescent-lit corridors beneath the gleaming corporate floors above, the real heartbeat of Pinnacle Industries pulsed quietly, unnoticed by the executives who would arrive in luxury cars hours later. 3 hours later, Marcus pushed his cleaning cart down the pristine marble hallway of the executive floor. The wheels squeaked softly against the polished surface, a sound that had become as familiar as his own heartbeat. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light across oil paintings worth more than most people's annual salaries, while the scent of expensive coffee and leather furniture hung in the air like privilege itself. He moved methodically, emptying trash bins and wiping down surfaces, his movements practiced and invisible. This was the floor where million-dollar decisions were made, where his own corner office sat behind mahogany doors. The irony burned in his chest every single day. The Morrison account is absolutely crucial, Jessica. If we nail this presentation, we're looking at a $40 million contract. Sarah Mitchell's voice carried down the hallway, sharp and confident. Her designer heels clicked against the marble with the rhythm of someone who had never questioned her place in the world. Marcus recognized her immediately, Senior Vice President of Client Relations, Harvard graduate, the kind of woman who spoke about diversity in board meetings while her actions told a different story. He had read her personnel file, seen the complaints that somehow never made it to his desk. "Don't worry, Sarah. I've got the projector set up in conference room A. This presentation will blow them away." Jessica's voice was equally polished, equally certain. As they approached, Marcus stepped aside to let them pass, but the hallway's narrow width forced him to maneuver his cart carefully. The wheel caught on the carpet edge, and he bumped slightly into Sarah's shoulder. The collision was barely perceptible, but Sarah's reaction was volcanic. "Are you kidding me right now?" Her voice exploded through the quiet hallway, her face contorting with a rage that seemed disproportionate to the minor contact. "Do you have any idea how much this suit costs?" Marcus steadied himself, his hands gripping the cart's handle. "I'm sorry, ma'am. I didn't mean—" "Of course you didn't mean to. People like you never mean to do anything. Do you?" The venom in her voice was unmistakable, each word dripping with contempt. "Clumsy? Careless. Probably can't even read the signs that say, 'Executive floor only.'" Jessica stepped forward, her coffee cup raised like a weapon. "Maybe this will teach you to watch where you're going." The hot liquid arced through the air, splashing across Marcus's chest and soaking through his uniform shirt. The coffee burned against his skin, but not as much as the words that followed. God, I'm so sick of this company hiring people who clearly don't belong here, Sarah continued, her voice rising. Look at him. Probably doesn't even have a high school diploma. This is what happens when you lower standards. Marcus stood frozen, coffee dripping from his shirt onto the pristine marble floor. His hands trembled, not from fear, but from the Herculean effort it took to remain silent. Every fiber of his being wanted to reveal who he was, to watch their faces crumble with the weight of their mistake. But something deeper held him back, a need to hear every poisonous word, to understand the full scope of what festered in his company's heart. The hallway fell silent except for the soft drip of coffee hitting the floor, each drop echoing like a countdown to an inevitable reckoning. The hallway had filled with an audience Marcus hadn't noticed gathering. Employees emerged from offices like theatergoers drawn to an unexpected drama, their faces a canvas of human nature's most uncomfortable truths. Some stared with wide eyes, others studied their phones with sudden fascination, and a few simply turned and walked away as if witnessing nothing at all. In the psychology of bystanders, there exists a moment of choice that defines character more than any resume or performance review ever could. It's the split second when a person decides whether to be complicit in cruelty or to risk their own comfort for someone else's dignity. Margaret from accounting clutched her files tighter and hurried past, her eyes fixed on the elevator buttons as if they held the secrets of the universe. Two junior executives whispered to each other, one pulling out his phone to capture the scene, the lens focusing on Marcus's humiliation with the detached curiosity of a nature documentary. But David Chun, a 23-year-old intern from the marketing department, felt something different stirring in his chest. The son of immigrants who had cleaned office buildings to put him through college, David recognized the weight of invisible labor and the cruelty of those who wielded power without wisdom. Here, let me help you with that. David's voice cut through the toxic air as he stepped forward, pulling paper towels from his briefcase. His hands shook slightly as he knelt beside Marcus, but his voice remained steady. Sarah's laughter echoed off the marble walls. Oh, how sweet. The intern wants to play hero. I'm sorry, David whispered as he helped Marcus blot the coffee from his shirt. I'm really sorry they did this to you. Marcus looked into the young man's eyes and saw something that had become rare in these halls. Genuine human decency. Thank you, he said quietly, his voice carrying depths that made David pause. There was something in that tone, a gravity that seemed to belong to someone far more significant than a janitor. As Marcus gathered his cleaning supplies and pushed his cart down the hallway, Sarah and Jessica's laughter followed him like a toxic cloud. Well, that was entertaining, Jessica said, checking her manicured nails. Maybe now he'll learn to stay in his lane. Exactly where he belongs, Sarah agreed, smoothing her suit jacket with satisfaction. But David Chun remained in the hallway, watching Marcus disappear around the corner, a growing certainty in his gut that something about this entire scene was terribly, dangerously wrong. Within an hour, the video had traveled through Pinnacle Industries' digital arteries like a virus seeking its host. Slack messages pinged across departments, WhatsApp groups buzzed with speculation, and email chains multiplied exponentially. The modern workplace had become a fishbowl where every moment of human cruelty could be captured, shared, and dissected by hundreds of eyes. Patricia Reeves was reviewing quarterly diversity reports when her assistant knocked frantically on her door. Patricia, you need to see this. Now. The HR director's coffee grew cold as she watched the footage on her laptop screen. Her face drained of color with each passing second, her hands trembling as she recognized the man being humiliated in the hallway. 23 years of human resources experience had prepared her for many crises, but nothing like this. Oh my God, she whispered, her voice barely audible. Oh my God, what have they done? The panic that flooded her system was primal, the kind that comes when you realize you're standing at the epicenter of an earthquake that could destroy everything. She knew Marcus Williams better than most, had worked with him for 5 years, had seen his vision transform the company, had watched him champion diversity initiatives with a passion that now made devastating sense. 40 floors above, Marcus sat in his real office, the CEO suite that bore his name on a brass placard outside the door. The coffee stains on his uniform had dried into dark patches that felt like battle scars. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city, but his gaze was fixed inward, on memories that had driven him to this moment. "You can't lead people you don't understand, son." His father's voice echoed from a conversation 3 months ago, when Marcus had first conceived this experiment. "Your grandfather cleaned offices for 40 years. He knew things about human nature that no business school could teach." The decision hadn't been impulsive. It had been born from exit interviews that revealed a pattern: talented employees of color leaving the company, citing cultural fit issues that never made it into official reports. It had grown from anonymous surveys that painted a picture of microaggressions and systemic bias that somehow never reached his desk. "I need to see it for myself," he had told his reflection that first morning. "I need to understand what's really happening in my company." Now, staring at his coffee-stained shirt, Marcus realized he had gotten exactly what he'd asked for. The truth was more brutal than any report could have captured, more personal than any statistic could convey. His phone buzzed with an urgent message from Patricia. "We need to talk. Immediately." The reckoning had begun, and there would be no going back. Patricia's hands trembled as she dialed the extension, each number feeling like a nail in a coffin she was building for 2 people who had no idea they were already dead. The HR conference room felt smaller than usual, its glass walls offering no privacy from the curious eyes of employees who sensed something momentous was unfolding. "Sarah, Jessica, I need you in conference room B immediately. We have a situation to discuss." 20 minutes later, they strutted through the door with the confidence of people who believed themselves untouchable. Sarah's designer blazer was perfectly pressed, her smile sharp as a blade. Jessica followed close behind, her posture radiating the kind of entitlement that comes from never facing real consequences. "Patricia, I hope this isn't about that little incident earlier," Sarah said, settling into her chair with practiced ease. "Because honestly, I think we handled it perfectly. Someone needed to put that man in his place." Patricia felt bile rise in her throat. She had hoped, prayed, that they might show some remorse, some recognition of their cruelty. Instead, they sat before her like predators discussing their latest kill. "Tell me exactly what happened," Patricia said, her voice carefully controlled. "Oh, it was ridiculous," Jessica laughed, examining her manicured nails. "This janitor clearly doesn't belong on the executive floor, bumped into Sarah like he owned the place. The audacity was unbelievable. He was clumsy, disrespectful, and frankly, I question how someone like that even got hired," Sarah added, her voice gaining momentum. "I mean, look, I'm all for giving people opportunities, but there has to be some standards. Some people just aren't cut out for professional environments." The words hit Patricia like physical blows. Each sentence revealed layers of prejudice that ran deeper than she had imagined, a worldview so toxic it made her stomach churn. "What do you mean by someone like that?" Patricia asked, though she dreaded the answer. "Come on, Patricia. You know exactly what I mean," Sarah said, leaning forward conspiratorially. "We need better screening processes. Background checks, education verification, maybe even aptitude tests. We can't have people wandering around who clearly don't understand workplace etiquette." "Exactly," Jessica nodded enthusiastically. "I mean, what's next? Are we going to let just anyone walk through these halls? There's a reason we have hierarchies, Patricia. Some people belong in certain positions and others, well, they belong elsewhere." Patricia's pen snapped in her grip, the crack echoing through the room like a gunshot. The 2 women looked at her with mild curiosity, completely oblivious to the magnitude of their mistake. "Sarah, Jessica," Patricia said, her voice barely above a whisper. "There's something you need to know about the man you humiliated today." Her hands shook as she reached for her phone, knowing that the next words out of her mouth would change everything. The boardroom's mahogany doors opened with a whisper, and Marcus Williams stepped inside wearing the armor of his true identity. A charcoal Tom Ford suit, Italian leather shoes, and the quiet confidence of a man who had built an empire. The transformation was so complete that, for a moment, Sarah and Jessica didn't recognize him. Then reality crashed over them like a tsunami. The color drained from Sarah's face so quickly she looked like she might faint. Jessica's mouth opened and closed soundlessly, her perfectly applied lipstick suddenly garish against her pale skin. The air in the room seemed to thicken, charged with the electricity of a reckoning 3 months in the making. "Good afternoon, ladies." Marcus's voice carried the same quiet dignity it had possessed in the hallway, but now it resonated with the authority of someone who controlled their professional destinies. He took his seat at the head of the table, and folded his hands with deliberate calm. "Mr. Williams, we, this is—" Sarah's voice cracked like thin ice under pressure. The woman who had been so eloquent in her cruelty now struggled to form coherent sentences. "You didn't know," Marcus said, his tone neither accusatory nor forgiving. "That's exactly the point." Jessica found her voice first, desperation making her words tumble out in a rush. "Sir, if we had known who you were, we never would have. It was all a misunderstanding. We thought you were just what, Jessica?" Marcus leaned forward slightly, his eyes never leaving hers. "Just a janitor? Just someone whose dignity didn't matter? Just a human being unworthy of basic respect?" The silence that followed was deafening. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city sprawled below them, oblivious to the moral earthquake happening 40 floors above the street. "For 3 months, I've walked these halls as someone you deemed invisible," Marcus continued, his voice gaining strength. "I've heard conversations you thought no one important was listening to. I've witnessed the culture that exists when you believe no one with power is watching." Sarah tried again, her voice barely above a whisper. "We're so sorry. We had no idea." "That's the problem," Marcus interrupted, his words cutting through her apology like a blade. "Your respect shouldn't depend on someone's title or position. Dignity isn't earned through hierarchy. It's a birthright that belongs to every person who walks through these doors." He stood slowly, his presence filling the room with an energy that made both women shrink in their chairs. "I didn't reveal myself to humiliate you, though I imagine that's how this feels. I revealed myself because this company, my company, will no longer tolerate the poison you've been spreading. The janitor you threw coffee at, the man you called unqualified, the human being you treated as less than, that was your CEO learning who you really are when you think no one important is watching." Marcus moved toward the window, his silhouette framed against the afternoon sky. "The question now is, what are you going to do with this knowledge?" The weight of his words settled over the room like a shroud, and in that moment, Sarah and Jessica realized their careers at Pinnacle Industries were over. The termination letters were signed before the sun set that day. Sarah Mitchell and Jessica Reynolds cleared out their offices under the watchful eyes of security, their careers at Pinnacle Industries reduced to cardboard boxes and the hollow echo of their heels against marble floors they would never walk again. But the real reckoning was just beginning. The video had escaped the company's digital walls like water through a cracked dam, spreading across social media platforms with the viral velocity of truth finally unleashed. #Pinnacle Accountability began trending within hours, and news outlets picked up the story with the hunger of sharks sensing blood in corporate waters. "This is bigger than just 2 employees," Marcus told Patricia as they watched the media storm unfold from his office windows. "This is about the culture we've allowed to fester in the shadows." The revelation had opened floodgates that had been sealed for years. Marcus's assistant fielded dozens of calls from employees, current and former, who suddenly felt safe enough to share their own stories. Tales of microaggressions, passed-over promotions, and subtle discrimination that had been whispered in break rooms now found their voice in formal complaints. Maria Santos from accounting called to report how her ideas were consistently attributed to male colleagues. James Washington from IT described being questioned about his credentials by clients who assumed he was a temp worker. The stories painted a picture that made Marcus's stomach turn with recognition and regret. "We're implementing mandatory bias training for all employees, starting with senior leadership," Marcus announced during an emergency board meeting. "And we're establishing an anonymous reporting system with direct access to my office." David Chun received a call that afternoon that would change his trajectory forever. "David, this is Marcus Williams. I'd like to offer you a position in our executive training program. Your courage yesterday showed me the kind of leader this company needs." The young intern's voice trembled with emotion. "Sir, I just did what felt right." "Exactly," Marcus replied. "That's what leadership looks like." As the day ended, Marcus stood in his office, still wearing the suit that had revealed his identity. The coffee stains on his uniform from that morning felt like artifacts from another lifetime, reminders of a truth that had cost two people their careers but might just save his company's soul. The transformation had begun, but Marcus knew the hardest work lay ahead, changing hearts and minds, one conversation at a time. 3 months later, the Pinnacle Industries auditorium buzzed with an energy that felt different. Hopeful, authentic, alive. Every seat was filled, from senior executives to maintenance staff, creating a tapestry of faces that truly represented the company for the first time in its history. Marcus stood at the podium, no longer hiding behind a uniform but wearing his identity with quiet pride. The same hands that had gripped a cleaning cart now gestured toward a future built on different principles. "When I walked these halls in disguise, I learned something that no business school could teach," he began, his voice carrying to every corner of the room. "I learned that respect isn't about titles or corner offices. It's about recognizing the humanity in every person who contributes to our success." In the audience, David Chun sat in the front row, his new executive badge catching the light. Beside him, Maria Santos nodded with tears in her eyes. Her promotion to senior analyst had come with Marcus's personal apology for years of overlooked contributions. "We've implemented new policies, new training, new systems," Marcus continued. "But real change happens in the small moments, when we choose to see each other as whole human beings deserving of dignity." The applause was thunderous, but Marcus raised his hand for quiet. "Tomorrow, you'll see me working alongside our facilities team again. Not in disguise this time, but because leadership means serving others, not standing above them." As employees filed out, conversations sparked across departments that had rarely spoken before. The marble hallways that once echoed with hierarchy now hummed with collaboration. Marcus remained at the podium, watching his company transform before his eyes. The coffee stains were long gone, but the lessons they taught would endure forever. In choosing truth over comfort, he had discovered that the most powerful position a leader could take was beside their people, not above them. The foundation was rebuilt, stronger than before.